The Grey Shadows by D.D. Poey. Voiced by Sean Ferguson. Part 1. 3 Strangers. As I slowly regained consciousness, I couldn't help but wonder how something so pleasurable could lead to so much pain. My head throbbed like a battered anvil, each pulse mocking my foolishness. Waking from a drunken stupor, death seemed inviting. Drenched in self-pity and regret, I couldn't agree more. I grumbled, "Not this again," as the reek of alcohol invaded my senses. Bitterness lingered, engulfing my lungs like an intoxicating fog.
"Woke up, huh?"
A haunting voice echoed around me.
"Your head must be throbbing, no?"
As awareness crept back in, I inhaled a lungful of thick air, filled with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. This invigorated me enough to sit up, my vision clouded by haze, strained to resolve the gaunt form standing before me. It was Brim.
"Damn, you're ugly,"
I mumbled, a twisted grin stretching across my face as I looked up at him. Brim's smile faded, revealing the worn features of a man who'd seen too much sorrow in his brief 50 years on this earth. Outlaw life had etched its merciless story into the lines and furrows of his face, aging him permanently. Constant struggle against nature left him rough and worn, like leather stretched over bone. Still, it seemed a small price for the wild freedom we've chosen, free from society's suffocating chains.
"Only joking,"
I said, feeling a twinge of guilt for teasing him.
"Honestly, you're quite the looker for a withered old-timer." "I don't think so,"
Brim finally spoke, frustration edging in.
"You love pushing limits. We've been booted from 3 taverns round here because of you."
I tried a grin.
"But I kept you all amused, eh?"
"Right, Jackal?"
"Aye,"
Jackal rumbled, steering the cart. Sitting behind him, I was eclipsed by his massive frame, shrouded in thick, bear-like fur. Though hidden by his back, I could picture his beady eyes under a heavy brow scanning the path ahead. I imagined his wide, flat nose, a curious curl in the center, sniffing out unwelcome scents. Jackal was different from average outlaws like Brim and me. He didn't learn the ropes in treacherous city streets where danger wore human faces. No. From a young age, he survived the brutal southern wilderness where the roles of hunter and hunted shifted like the wind. One particular booze-soaked night, Jackal shared a story from his past. He said he'd been dared to snatch a bear cub, and never one to back down, he'd done it. Astonishingly, he returned unscathed, with the live cub. It seemed like a tall tale, but I grew to believe it after years together. Jackal wasn't just muscle. He had a slyness to rival any fox, but a storm brewed within him, a fiery temper that, when provoked, sent him charging into fights. It was this relentless spirit that made the bear cub story more credible.
"Should you need to relieve yourself of your stomach's contents,"
Brim said, his tone straddling the line between concern and mockery,
"I suggest you aim beyond the wagon. I suggest you aim beyond the wagon."
"Piss off," I snarled at Brim. Besides the mountainous presence of Jackal, Brim appeared almost childlike. His thin, wiry frame and balding head housed bright blue eyes, always sizing up the situation. While Jackal barreled through life's obstacles, Brim deftly sidestepped the world's treacherous snares. Brim, the human embodiment of a whisper, slipped in and out of rooms like a ghost, attending his own funeral. Observing Brim on the job, I'd marvel at his finesse as a lookout for more discreet operations. He fitted from one dark corner to another like a breeze, effortlessly merging with shadows and bending light to his will. His movements were so fluid and synchronized that the air around him seemed to conspire in his deception. His silence was almost eerie. On the rare occasions he made noise, it was a calculated symphony of environmental mimicry. He was a true master of his craft, but I'd never admit it aloud. As our cart left the forest, creaking wheels gave way to rustling grasses. The scent of decay and dampness was replaced by wildflowers and grass. But the meadow's beauty was marred by a disheartening sight ahead. The morning mist thinned, like the lingering smoke after a raid, revealing to us a cruel mockery of what it once was. Broken buildings and shattered walls stood in silent testament to the devastation that had ravaged these lands. "Remember this place before the war?" I said, as nostalgia swirled like a bitter draught. A reminder of the golden age that once graced this land, Sunlight used to bathe these fields in warmth, laughter echoing throughout the lush greenery.
I do,
Brim replied, his gaze lingering on the wreckage.
It was home to some good people.
Like Handy, I chuckled. Nicest fat bastard there ever was. A rare laugh escaped Brim.
Say what you want, but the old Herald was a fair man. He treated everyone equally.
Couldn't argue with that. The man didn't pass judgment and knew exactly how this world operated. It's one of the few villages where we were welcomed, I said.
As long as we followed the rules, Brim added. I don't have to remind you what happened to your face after you pursued his wife.
The image of his massive fists pounding my face brought back a peculiar, aching sensation. I didn't know she was his wife.
You knew, Brim said. But you didn't care, did you?
He was right. I hadn't cared whose wife she was until I couldn't open my eyes. Then I changed my mind. Still, I began. All was forgiven, and we left on good terms.
You had a great sense of humor, too, Brim continued. The village belly fights you organized were legendary.
The vivid memory of sweaty, rotund men wrestling in just their breeches came to me suddenly. At the moment, I couldn't decide whether to laugh or be sick. Somehow I managed without losing my insides. "Oh, Jackal," I said, barely suppressing a chuckle. "You would have loved him. He was as endearing as you." Jackal sighed, his voice cold as ice. "They burned my entire village. Everyone I ever loved gone in one night. Do you really think I care about some jolly old man?" Silence settled between us, the air growing colder. Each breath was heavy, tinged with a biting sharpness. A shiver traveled down my spine. I couldn't tell if it was due to Jackal's words or the chilling morning breeze. Yet no one could dispute his point. In times of war, entire villages were massacred, and only those affected truly cared. The silver lining was that no one would mourn our deaths, a band of misfits destined for failure. "You know what, Jackal?" Brim said, his voice as frosty as Jackal's. "You're right. There's no reason for you to care, but that doesn't make Harold's fate, gutted like a fish in front of his wife and children, any meaningless." Perhaps that's the cost of decency. Good folks seem to fall first. Simple inhabitants tilling the earth and herding their flocks sought nothing more than to live in the shadows of the world's grand schemes. Their hands calloused and their backs bent. They nurtured the kingdom's sustenance, yet they only received the crumbs that fell from the high table. "Did they take Handy's children too?" I whispered. Brim's face darkened. "And his wife." "What do you think?" Brim's voice wavered, betraying his emotions. Though I knew little of his past, the subject of a wife and daughter seemed to be a sore spot for him. "Garners are savages, more beast than human." Despite our own tarnished reputations, we even adhered to a moral code. At least that's what we told ourselves. The truth is murkier, and we revel in the chaos and lawlessness that suits our nature. However, the Garnors were a breed apart, leaving a trail of torment and devastation, homes reduced to smoldering ruins, brutalized bodies scattered in the aftermath, and the haunting cries of the innocent echoing through the night. Thinking of Handy's wife and daughters, I couldn't help but wonder if I would have acted differently in the Garnos' position, or if my companions would have, for that matter. As twisted as it sounds, we outlaws thrive in chaos, and once we're in it, it's easy to get lost. The things we do are often something most of us wish to forget. At least that can give us a moral high ground over those savages. Now the world is a stranger to itself. The laughter is gone, stolen in the night by old men with ambitions. They snatched away the children and women, leaving behind only shadows and memories. "I hear some made it out," I muttered, escaped to the west. "Perhaps," Brim responded, his voice tinged with exhaustion and a hint of resignation. "But the majority rest beneath the soil, victims of the Garner's onslaught." It was true. Those who remained barely survived, doing whatever was necessary. Their only respite was the fleeting comfort of a throat-warming drink, a brief respite that offered them a fleeting chance to forget, even if just for a moment. Silence enveloped us like a blanket. I embraced the respite of dream-filled sleep, despite my lingering hangover. The warm breeze and the scent so sweet it was like honey lulled me into tranquility. But the relentless sun soon seared my skin, yanking me back to reality. Squinting against the glare, a question gnawed at my hazy thoughts.
Why in the hells are we headed to Domask?
To rob someone, Jackal snorted.
What else?
I frowned, thoughts hazy.
Didn't we just rob a wagon days ago?
The last cart was shit,
Jackal scoffed.
No gold, silver, or ale. No value.
But those elixirs, those powders, I protested, recalling the bizarre loot. They had a peculiar allure. Those hues and shadows, an unsettling array of chromatic enigmas. A touch, a mere brush of the fingers seemed to rouse the very essence of life within. An unseen force, its nature uncertain, stirred, wrenched from the abyss of slumber.
Value lies in the sale,
Brim chided in.
Without any buyers, it's just as Jackal stated. Shit.
Bets refused, I countered, anger fueling me. He'd miss value if it smacked him. Brim settled, smirking.
He knows gold and we're broke. Want to sleep in the cold? Sober?
I shot him a begrudging glare. The wiry coot had a point.
A few pints would be enough to drown the sorrows of the day.
We got company.
Jackal's gravelly voice jarred me. Halting my descent into slumber's embrace once again, Brim sprang to his feet.
3 of 'em, armored, a bruiser, and a woman.
I strained for a glimpse, wobbling. A furlong ahead, a figure in gleaming armor stood, puzzled.
A knight,
Jackal grumbled.
That armor's pricey.
You can't be serious.
Brum squinted as if drawing them nearer.
We're not robbing them.
The hell we aren't,
Jackal spat.
Let's move on, Brim insisted, gaze unwavering. They're not locals.
True, knights were scarce here, where piss-stained tunics were the norm. That armor could fetch a fortune. But we need gold, I said, smirking, and it's waiting for us in the middle of the road.
Aye,
Jackal grunted.
We can handle them.
Jackal's eyes gleamed with anticipation, eager for the clash to shake off his tension. Deserved or not, fights rarely discriminated. After all, we all carried our share of guilt. But gold! We desperately needed that. Brim sighed, preparing.
From a distance, I could take one out with an arrow.
No, surprise them, I said, adrenaline surging. Follow my lead.
Sure?
Brim's raised brow resembled pity for a wounded pup. Absolutely. I concealed my blade within the folds of my sleeve. I'll take the knight. Brim, go for the girl. Jackal, the brute's yours. My heart hammered and my wits were honed. One purpose emerged. Slip near, engage with guile, perhaps even chat, then eliminate them by any means, before they do the same to us. As we approached, the knight lurched forth, his armor a dazzling dance of sunlight, a near blinding spectacle. He rooted himself in the muck-strewn road, a force to be reckoned with. "Hold there!" he thundered, the echo of his words sweeping the path. Jackal's hands tightened on the reins, struggling for control over the spooked horses. Yet before he could utter a sound, the knight continued. "Well met, fellow wanderers!" He motioned to his old companions, a hulking, fur-covered barbarian wielding an axe, and a young girl with an air of mystique, priestess or sorceress perhaps. "I am Sir Kelliot, and these are Nord and Mirieth. Can you direct us to Domask? The signs, if any, are treacherous." "Well met," I replied, leaping from the cart, as though my body were not besieged by pain. Now was not the time to have displayed my affliction. "The signs are intentionally deceptive, designed to confuse unwanted intruders." Sir Kelliot's eyes glinted, unfazed by the ridicule. "Keeping the road secure, are we, the 3 of you?" "We strive the best we can," I parried, seeking to regain conversational control. "The path to Domask teems with brigands and cutthroats. May I inquire into the purpose of your hazardous venture?" The knight scoffed. "We shall fare well enough," he gestured to his comrades. "You will be sprawled in a pool of your own lifeblood soon." I longed to retort, but held my tongue. Instead, I studied the peculiar ensemble. Sir Kelliot's armor shone as if he had toiled over it since daybreak. Nord, the barbarian, was a formidable amalgamation of muscle and hair, his axe casting an ominous shadow. Mirieth, the enigmatic lass, wore a countenance suggesting the imminent release of a nasty fart. "Of course," I concurred, bowing deeply. "It is not our concern. Where are my manners?" Sometimes one must deceive them to ensnare them. Now, the knight approached. "It's quite all right. A particular merchant in Domask requires our aid in a delicate matter." His final words served to close the topic to further inquiry. "I understand." I drawled, sliding closer to him, discreetly signaling Brim and Jackal behind me to ready themselves. "That is a splendid suit of armor. Might I touch the metal?"
"By all means,"
the knight assented, his grin widening, clearly flattered by my feigned adoration.
"Forged from the finest Midorian steel."
He surveyed me, a touch of desertion flickering in his eyes.
"A rare and highly coveted material indeed."
This pompous ass seems to be eating his bullshit as fast as he's shoveling it. It's high time to set things in motion. I let my hand drift towards his breastplate, the corners of my mouth twitching upward. As I came within reach, I whispered softly, "So, do you polish this shiny armor yourself, or do you have the bitch do it?" Sir Kelliot's face contorted in disgust, disbelief dancing in his eyes as I flashed a wicked grin. My ruse to unsettle him proved effective. He spared a glance towards the girl, unwittingly baring his throat to the cold steel that had already found a home in my grasp. Silent as a shadow, my blade sliced through his flesh without a sound, like hot metal through butter. He crumpled to his knees, blood gushing like a crimson fountain, his windpipe exposed as he gurgled and clawed at the air. Desperate, his hand scrambled to unsheath his weapon, but I was quicker. My boot connected with his chest, unwilling to risk a last-ditch reprisal. The hulking brute closed the distance, deceptively quick for his size. Jackal matched him in speed, however, crashing into the giant like a rogue wave, their bodies churning the mud beneath as they wrestled. My gaze flicked to the girl, her eyes a luminous velvet, hands and lips weaving an unseen tapestry. The sharp whir of Brim's arrow cut through the air before I could react, struck true, and snuffled the arcane light from her eyes. Brim reached for another arrow, but I stopped him. "I've got this one." I turned to the dying knight, a smirk painted across my face. "All that fancy armor didn't help you one bit, did it, rich boy?" With a final merciless flourish, I buried my dagger deep into his eye. Brim's voice sliced the turmoil, sharp and clear.
"Are you well?"
I jerked my head, adrenaline smothering the ache in my bones. "Never better." A ruckus yanked our eyes to Jackal, wrestling a hulk of a man into submission. Bowstring tense, Brim hollered at him.
"And you, Jackal?"
A vile crack shattered the air, and Jackal's grip slackened.
"Nearly there,"
he rasped, straightening up and smearing his hands down his breeches.
"Done."
"Cheerful, aren't we?"
Brim's eyebrow arched as his bow sagged.
"Alive, loot in hand, and enemies dead," I said, grinning at Brim. "What's not to love?"
Jackal grumbled under his breath, appraising the hulking axe he'd snatched from the brute. A beauty, that one.
"There's something not right with them,"
Brim mused, surveying the fallen. Brim's unease shadowed his every step, as though he were haunted by some unforeseen darkness. Each time we completed a task, he sought to leave it behind like an ill omen, but it wasn't cowardice. It was an instinctive dread that clung to him like a shroud. Upon closer examination, something was off. The knight, now missing an eye, bore little resemblance to a noble warrior, more beggar than knight. His tattered appearance veiled the pristine armor that encased him. The hulking man, though undoubtedly strong, was no seasoned fighter. His calloused hands and marks of fire and steel upon his skin spoke of a life spent sharing metal in the forge, not taking lives in battle. And the young woman, barely 2 decades old, seemed the most incongruous of all. She had the air of a witch about her, yet her delicate features, porcelain skin, untouched by sun, and unmarred hands aside from the arrow in her chest. But I kept my observations to myself, wary of stoking Brim's anxiety further. Instead, I kicked Sir Kelliot squarely in the breastplate. "Real enough, if you ask me." "Let's see what they got, haul the loot onto the cart, and pitch the stiffs to the ditch," I ordered, already savoring the reward. "There's an ale with my name on it, just begging to be drained."
"No pockets on this one,"
Jackal remarked, a cracked smile on his face as he lifted the brute's loincloth, leaving the limp corpse utterly exposed. "Show the dead some decency," I chided, stifling a chuckle. "We were bastards, but at least we owned it. Dump him in those bushes." As I set my sight on the knight's pockets, I caught Brim frozen before the girl, as if rooted in place. "Got a soft spot for her?" I hollered, a sly grin spreading across my face. "Go on, have a quickie. We won't peek. Promise." Brim didn't so much as flinch, remaining as still as a statue. "Come on, I was joking," I said, stepping a little closer. "You're a decent sort, for a rogue." The girl's lifeless form sprawled there, unseeing eyes gazing skyward, and Brim's blank expression spoke volumes.
"She'd be about the age my daughter never reached,"
he murmured, the words thick and stale in the air. I clenched my jaw, wanting to offer comfort or crack a joke to break the tension, but I held back. Some hurts ran too deep, and talking couldn't fix them. Silence was better, letting the moment's weight settle on us. We didn't discuss our problems. Brim didn't need pity or sympathy, just time. And even that might not be enough. Brim took me in when I was a scrappy 11-year-old, near 15 years back. Despite our shared history, there were shadowy corners in our pasts we never explored. A tacit pact held the specters at bay. When I fled home years ago, I had no desire to speak of it. Brim grasped that, for he held his own history close. At times a morsel slipped out, or a drunken confession revealed regrets. Still, we understood that some matters were best unspoken. With unspoken understanding, Jackal approached the girl and lifted her with surprising gentleness. Brim's gaze followed her to the ditch. That was Jackal, knowing what was right without needing to say it. Unlike me.
Snap out of it,
I grumbled, while gripping Brim's shoulder.
You drifted off there.
Brim blinked his eyes, hazy. His thoughts had been ensnared by past misdeeds. But there had been no time for that.
I'm good,
he stammered.
Let's finish this.
I nodded, gesturing to the towering Jackal.
Take a breather,
his deep voice rumbled.
We've got it covered.
With a subtle nod, Jackal and I began our gruesome work. Heartless and soulless, we showed no remorse as we stripped the dead of their valuables. Gold, necklaces, and trinkets. Our pockets swelled with the spoils. The prized armor held great value, as did the knight's sword. The dagger and axe were worth less, but should still fetch a crown or two. In the midst of the carnage, a crumpled paper caught my eye. A letter. A desperate plea for help. The same message the knight had mentioned.
The damn bastard wasn't lying,
I muttered, feeling strangely upbeat. They were heading to Damask to help a merchant.
Good for him,
Jackal replied, relieving the knight of his armor.
We've got better things to worry about.
Like 100 gold crowns? I asked, waving the letter.
100?
Jackal paused and looked up.
That'll last us half a year.
Closer to 3 months, considering our expenses. It was still a significant sum.
It's more than we'll get for all this,
Brim noted, eerily quiet. Brim seemed more himself again, not cheerful, but at least he wasn't standing like a statue. If we went to any fence other than bets, I stood, still holding the letter, but with bets, we'd get a third of that. Brim didn't react to my jab, and Jackal looked expectantly for an explanation. We could pose as these fools, I suggested, feigning authority. Claim the 100 gold crowns for ourselves.
And how do you suppose we do that?
Brim asked, meeting my gaze.
Don't exactly resemble them. And they ain't wearing this brute's loincloth,
Jackal added quickly. No, I countered. We go as ourselves, do the job like any other and collect the reward. Or kill the merchant and take our due.
I like it,
Jackal nodded.
But we still don't look like them,
Brim persisted.
And we lack a woman.
I laughed, though forced. Think the merchant cares about appearances? I asked, attempting to sound authoritative. I'll play Sir Kelliot, Jackal can pass for the brute, and you... Well, you can be the girl. I appraised Brim. You already resemble a hag. Brim hesitated for a moment before reluctantly agreeing.
Fine, but first, we need to take this loot to Betts.
I stifled a groan. Betts was a sly weasel, consistently shortchanging us. He'd promise a fifth of an item's value, but half its worth first, leaving us with a meager tenth. Brim had a past with him, though, making him an unavoidable nuisance. All right, let's load the cart and get moving. As our departure had neared, my thoughts turned to Damask, a wretched hive unlike any other. In its dark corners, depravity flourished, and even the most honorable souls succumbed to the siren call of corruption. It was a destination fit for one such as myself, in search of a temporary escape from the burdens of reality. End of part 1. If you enjoyed the story so far, please like, comment, and subscribe. Details about the next part and other cool links in the description.